this. So it's pulling, like legs are coming together and closed. Hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it. And then big inhale. And as you exhale, release those legs and try to push a little bit further. And again, contract both of those muscles, pulling those hips up to the ceiling, and breathe deep and release and stretch. If you are all the way here, same thing can happen. You're just going to feel like both legs are going to pull up and off the floor, and then back down and release and stretch. And again, if you're here from the start, then try to pull a little bit higher, and then sit and release, breathe nice and deep. And that can also be done in a very low straddle or center split. So if the legs are out and over, same thing, try to lift those hips just slightly. Hold, 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 and breathe deep and release. My favorite thing to end with is any type of quad stretch or hip flexor stretch. You can use any that we've already done. My favorite has a little less impact on the body because everything, we're already usually very tight in the hips, and a lot of our stretching is also increased that flexion in that hip. I like to end with a nice long front of the thigh and front of the hip bone. So you're going to start with one leg in front of the other. So one leg is inverted and the other one is in front of you. From here, you can open the legs, a little bit of space so that your knee is not on your toe. Doesn't have to be very much, just a little bit. Whatever leg is back, I'm going to lean away from it on the long diagonal line. So I'm not going to go straight back this way. Moving straight back puts more pressure and danger on this knee, which you really want to try to avoid. So you follow this line of the diagonal, which then releases the knee and takes any pressure off of that. From here, you just relax onto that opposite arm. You're going to push this hip bone up to the ceiling, and as you're doing that, you're going to feel like your belly button is coming into your spine. So there's no arch in your lower back whatsoever. That's nice and flat, and this is pushing up to the ceiling as you're pushing down on your knee. You should feel this stretch anywhere along your thigh, depending on how flexible your hip flexor is. If you feel it down here, that means it's quite tight. The more you do this stretch over time, the more you'll be able to feel that stretch migrate itself up towards the hip. If you feel it in your hip flexor, it's always a very good stretch, but that means this is pretty nice and open, which we want especially for that back leg in your splits. Hold this stretch for at least a minute or two, and then you would release, change sides, and do the opposite one. Again, hold for a good minute or two, belly button into the spine, hip to the ceiling, knee to the floor. With any of this, or with workouts, or whatever else you're doing, the body will eventually be sore. Dealing with any sore muscles, you want to really make sure that they're nice and warm before you need them to work really hard. So part of that can be done in your lap swim warm-up. If your shoulders are a little sore, you know, really working through a nice freestyle backstroke, hip bones, you know, if your hip flexors or if your butt's a little tight, you know, doing very nice, non-resistant hip circles or knee circles, anything, you know, that doesn't put any weight, any pressure on whatever it is sore. You want to try to warm that muscle up to get it to relax, to let go before you really need to use it again. And the best way to do that is, like in our very beginning roll-ups and downs, that you do that through full range of motion. It doesn't have to be very fast, very calm, but you really want to make sure that it's moving to its full ability in a soft, gentle motion, so that through the movement, the muscle will start to let go and really relax, and that soreness you'll be able to work through. With your flexibility, as you begin to increase all of this, a lot of the stuff that we've done for this video will show that progression. You start where to start, and once that has then become a little bit easier, more loose, you can feel less of a stretch, then where to go from there. As you're gaining flexibility, you then need to move along those progressions on each part of the body and every little segment. Because if you do the same stretch and you don't feel it anymore, then it's not working anymore. So you need to change and adapt your stretch and take it to the next place. You know, sometimes that's just adding a flexed foot. Sometimes that's going a little bit farther with the torso, or in the split, letting yourself drop down a little bit further, making sure that you're in the correct positions. Everything and anything can be a stretch. If you feel, you know, just putting your head to the side doesn't have a stretch anymore, add a little bit of resistance and a little bit of pull with the top of the arm, and then you feel a stretch. Same thing with legs. If you're too comfortable and you don't feel anything, then lean a little bit farther or add some PNF. Use that opposite muscle, really tense it up, and then push yourself and let it relax into the next place. But your flexibility regimen will always be changing as you gain flexibility. Within all of these stretches as well, not everything can be used this way, but there is a difference and a way to use a pulse to help increase blood flow and flexibility within a stretch already. You want to be careful not to bounce. A bounce would be a complete release of the stretch, coming all the way out of it and then dropping into it again. That's not safe and it's not very comfortable. A pulse, on the other hand, is very small, if you think of it as like a heartbeat. And while you're in the stretch, you stay within the stretch's limits, and then you slowly just kind of give that a little bit of movement. One example would be if you're laying just on your back, not against the wall, but if you pulled yourself into a straddle, and you're just holding your legs, like there's not a lot of pressure in the hands, but just nice and open through the hip bones, equal weight on each leg, and then through in here, using the hands to do a slight pulse, and the pulse is down. So instead of down, release, that would be a bounce. This is too hard on the body. And so staying within the stretch is just pushing a little bit further and just releasing it to where it started in the first place, which is still in the stretch. So this would be a nice, easy pulse. The other thing is eventually, so far everything we've done besides the PNF stretches are ballistic stretches and ballistic movement. Everything in synchro, for the most part, requires that quick twitch fiber. So you've got to be able to throw it out there, find your line, and bring it back without losing everything else that's connected to it. So once you've really gotten a hold of these good static stretches, then you can do, for example, you know, the swimmers can hold onto the wall and just start with like really easy leg swings. You know, they can be straight leg, bent leg, they can be in parallel, or they can be turned out, your working leg. And just, again, nice and low, and then going for full maximum height without letting things change and become really distorted. From here, I think for ballistic stretches, and all of this, there are lots of books, there's lots of videos, but there's lots of forms of stretching within movement, which is what synchro is. Everything is constantly moving, and we need our flexibility to help get us into the next position and have more range of motion. A couple of those outside resources is yoga, Pilates, gyrotonics, dance, gymnastics, everything that is still very movement-based, but has all these, you know, yoga still has a lot of static stretching within that, breathing into the body, letting everything move. So everything in your community should be able to help guide you into the next place for your swimmers. This is a very, very basic stretching routine. So this is only the very beginning. As this becomes easier and everything will need to change and your athletes are going to improve, they also then need to take it to the next level. They need to add not only static and PNF, but ballistic and everything else, so that their advancement within the sport then matches their advancement in their training. So really look into your community, online, other coaches, send out emails, ask lots of questions, but there's always room to grow within flexibility and strength.